Imagine a child standing at the gates of a towering building, their long hair about to be cut, their name about to be taken away, and their language forbidden from ever passing their lips again. They are told that their gods are demons, their songs are sins, and their family traditions nothing but savagery. What stands before them is not just a school, not just a church, but a machine of assimilation, one that seeks to bury their entire culture under the shadow of the cross. This is the story of how Christianity was not only a faith, but also a tool wielded in colonized societies across the world to erase identities, suppress traditions, and enforce obedience to empire. Welcome to Voice from the Colonized, where we uncover the forgotten histories, silenced voices, and hidden truths of those who lived under the weight of colonial rule. If you find value in these stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so together we can bring these voices back to life. And if you want to support our work in keeping these histories alive, check the description for links on how you can help us financially. Suppression of native languages and customs. Colonization was never just about conquering lands, it was about conquering minds. One of the most effective ways colonizers achieved this was by attacking language, the lifeline of culture. Across Africa, Asia, and the Americas, missionaries were often the first colonial agents to arrive. They came with Bibles and dictionaries, determined to replace indigenous tongues with European languages. To them, native languages were not simply different, they were corrupt, primitive, or even the language of the devil. In North America, native children in missionary schools were beaten for speaking their own languages. Reports from the late 19th century describe children forced to repeat phrases in English until exhaustion, while their original words were condemned as heathen relics. The American Indian education reports in the 1880s stated, "To speak the native tongue is to cling to heathen darkness." In Africa, similar processes unfolded. British and French missionaries openly stated that true civilization could not take root until the vernacular was abandoned. In some cases, like in Nigeria and Kenya, local languages were deliberately suppressed in education, replaced by English or French curricula. Clothing and customs followed the same fate. Missionaries condemned traditional attire as nakedness and demanded that indigenous people adopt European suits, dresses, and hairstyles. Hair itself became a battleground. Cutting it symbolized stripping away pagan pride. The Canadian residential school rules from 1895 bluntly stated, "Let them cut their hair, for their pride lies in heathen vanity." By stripping people of their language and customs, colonizers hoped to sever the chain of cultural transmission, ensuring future generations would be unable to return to their roots. Church-led campaigns against indigenous spiritual practices, but language and clothing were only the surface. At the heart of colonizations, cultural war was an assault on indigenous spirituality. Missionaries viewed traditional religions not as alternative worldviews, but as obstacles to salvation. Drums, masks, totems, shrines, these were branded as demonic. Bonfires were lit across Africa and the Americas, where missionaries burned sacred objects in the name of Christ. One 19th century West African missionary sermon declared, "The axe of Christ must fall upon the tree of superstition." In the Philippines, Spanish priests destroyed native shrines, replacing them with churches. In Latin America, Catholic missions stood atop the ruins of temples, physically stamping Christianity over indigenous holy sites. In India, sacred groves and festivals were outlawed, declared incompatible with civilized Christian life. Music and art were also targeted. Where once the drumbeat carried the heartbeat of the community, missionaries replaced it with church organs and hymns. The Missionary Review Journal in 1905 wrote, "The drumbeat of the heathen must be silenced by the organ." Marriage customs were rewritten. Adornments and rituals tied to indigenous beliefs were banned. Women were told to abandon ancestral ornaments and wear Christian symbols instead. In some cases, indigenous healers were publicly humiliated, branded as witches, and outlawed. A colonial court transcript from 1897 stated bluntly, "The witch doctor must bow before the priest." By dismantling spiritual practices, colonizers aimed to cut people off from their gods, their ancestors, and their sense of the sacred. It was more than conversion, it was cultural annihilation masked as salvation. Boarding schools and cultural genocide, perhaps the most devastating tool of all, was the boarding school system. From Canada to the United States, from Australia to Africa, Indigenous children were taken from their families and placed in missionary or state-run schools. There, every aspect of their identity was systematically erased. The philosophy behind these schools was chillingly summarized by Richard Henry Pratt, founder of the Carlisle Indian School in 1892. Kill the Indian, save the man. Inside these institutions, children were stripped of their names, given Christian ones, and forced to speak only the colonizers' language. Their clothes were burned, replaced with uniforms. Their hair, often long and symbolic, was cut. Punishments for disobedience ranged from beatings to starvation. One Canadian residential school manual wrote, "We forbid their tongue, for it breeds rebellion." Children caught speaking their native languages often had their mouths washed with soap. Death was a constant shadow. Poor sanitation, malnutrition, and abuse claimed countless lives. Graveyards grew outside many of these schools, rows of small crosses marking the silenced voices of children who never returned home. Priests recorded their deaths not with sorrow, but with cold satisfaction. They perished as heathens, but shall rise as Christians. These schools didn't just traumatize individuals, they tore apart communities. Children who survived often returned unable to speak to their elders, alienated from their traditions, and ashamed of their own heritage. The damage spanned generations, creating cycles of disconnection and pain that persist to this day. Global examples and patterns. What makes this history chilling is its global reach. In Canada and the US, residential schools sought to annihilate Native American and First Nations cultures. In Australia, the stolen generations of Aboriginal children were taken from their families to be raised in Christian missions. In Africa, from Kenya to South Africa, missionary schools reshaped entire communities, teaching obedience to both God and empire. In Latin America, Catholic missions not only baptized, but also enslaved indigenous people, embedding colonial control within Christian conversion. Though varied in context, the pattern was always the same. Christianity was used not simply as a faith, but as a weapon of empire, cutting away the roots of identity and planting seeds of obedience. Legacy and reflection. Today, many indigenous communities are reclaiming their languages, reviving spiritual traditions, and demanding recognition of the harms caused by these campaigns of assimilation. Truth and Reconciliation commissions in countries like Canada have documented the atrocities of residential schools, calling them cultural genocide. And yet, the scars remain. Survivors speak of broken families, lost childhoods, and generations robbed of connection to their heritage. The echoes of those missionary classrooms and colonial sermons still shape lives today. This history challenges us to ask, was this truly faith, or was it conquest in the name of God? Conclusion. The story of Christianity as a tool of cultural assimilation is not just about the past, it's about voices silenced, identities erased, and wounds still healing in colonized societies today. By remembering, we resist erasure. By speaking, we honor those who were silenced. By telling these stories, we reclaim what was nearly lost. This was Voice from the Colonized. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can learn the truths hidden beneath colonial history. And if you'd like to support us in continuing this work, check the description below for links on how to help us financially. Every contribution ensures these voices are never forgotten again.